Isn't it a great day to be a Christian? Open your Bibles to 2 Corinthians chapter 11.
Right.
2 Corinthians chapter 11. A few days ago, one of the cable channels was showing a movie called The Devil Wears Prada. Now, I don't know much about high fashion, but this movie was all about what goes on behind the scenes in the fashion industry. And it turns out, in order to sell people products, clothes, or anything else, what they're really doing is trying to sell an image. But Paul said that that's not anything new. It was going on back in his day. So look at 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Let's begin reading with verse 1. Paul writes this: Would to God ye would bear with me a little in my folly, and indeed bear with me, for I am jealous over you with godly jealousy. For I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. But I fear, lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. For if he that cometh preacheth another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if ye receive another spirit which ye have not received, or another gospel which ye have not accepted, ye might well bear with him. For I suppose I was not a whit behind the very chiefest apostle, but though I be rude in speech, yet not in knowledge, but we have been throughly made manifest among you in all things. Have I committed an offense in abasing myself, that ye might be exalted? Because I have preached to you the gospel of God freely. I robbed other churches, taking wages of them to do you service. And when I was present with you and wanted, I was chargeable to no man. For that which was lacking to me, the brethren which came from Macedonia supplied. And in all things I have kept myself from being burdensome unto you, and so will I keep myself. As the truth of Christ is in me, no man shall stop me of this boasting in the regions of Achaia. Wherefore, because I love you not, God knoweth. But what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off occasion from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory they may be found even as we. For such are false prophets, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it's no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. When I first saw the title of that movie, The Devil Wears Prada, I didn't have that much idea about what Prada really was. I knew it was some kind of clothes, at least I thought it was. So I looked it up, and it turns out that Prada is this high-class fashion outlet from Italy. And they have all these wonderful clothes and products to go along with them. And I looked on their website. And on their website, there was this video. So I watched the video, and when I watched it the first time, I didn't think the sound was on. I kept playing with my computer, trying to see, because there wasn't any talking. There wasn't any music. There wasn't any sound at all. And I watched it a couple of times, and then I discovered there was something else that was missing from that video. There wasn't any mention of Prada clothing or accessories or anything. They didn't say anything about their company. All it showed was several people, and I'm guessing they were wearing Prada clothes, I don't know, but they were sitting around or standing around, and they were just looking at each other, looking at the camera. They didn't say anything because they weren't really selling clothes in that commercial. What they were selling was an image. What they were selling was prestige and style and status, because they're trying to get you to think, if I buy this product, then I'll look cool like all these other people that are in this video. They all look stylish and cool. I want to be stylish and cool, so I need to buy Prada. Essentially, that's what fashion houses have always sold. Their clothes are just like clothes that you get at Walmart or Target or wherever. They want you to have that image, that label, that prestige. They're selling an image of what you could be like if you just buy their product, if you just take what they're selling. And Paul says that's what Satan's been doing since the beginning. He's been selling an image. Paul said in our scripture in 2 Corinthians 11:14, Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Satan wants you to think that he's something special. When I was a kid and I thought of the devil, I always thought about this guy dressed in red with horns and a pitchfork, and nobody would buy anything that somebody like that selling because he was scary looking. And he didn't look very trustworthy. That's not somebody that you would want to buy something from. So that's not what he shows himself. It says he portrays himself as an angel of light. So Satan masquerades. He wants to be appealing. He wants people to like what he's got to sell. But we know that what Satan has to sell is not something that we want. So instead of selling his product, he sells an image. It's all about the packaging. And people sell products to us based on the packaging. You remember several years ago, back when it was legal to advertise tobacco products on television, Marlboro cigarettes, their spokesperson was the Marlboro Man. Here was this cowboy on horseback. He was manly looking. He would come in smoking a Marlboro, and people said, I want to look like that. I want to be manly like that. I want what he's got. But what he was really selling is something that would kill you. In fact, the actor that played the Marlboro Man on television died of lung cancer. That's not what you want to buy. That's not the product that they want you to look at. They wanted you to look at the image. Next week's the Super Bowl. My favorite part of the Super Bowl is watching the commercials because there's always some new advertisement, something that they're showing, and I enjoy that. But invariably, there are going to be a lot of alcoholic beverages advertised on the Super Bowl. And when you see those commercials for that beer or that wine or whatever it is that they're selling, they're going to show all these handsome men and beautiful women. And they're going to be having a good time. They're going to be partying. They're going to be flirting. They're going to be carrying on. And the idea is, if you'll drink this, then you can be cool like these people are. You can have fun like they're having fun. What they don't show you are the homeless people that have drank up everything they own and now they're living on the street. They don't show you the people in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings that are trying to put their lives back together because they've drunk away all their money. They've lost all their friends. They've lost all their family. They don't want you to see the product, so they sell you the image. And Satan tries to do the same thing. Satan looks at all the things that people want in life, and that's what he tries to sell us. Popularity, acceptance, manliness for men, and beauty for women. And Satan says, just follow me, and you can look like this. You can have this pleasure. You can have this success. You can have this achievement if you'll just do what I want you to do. But Satan is using an image because he knows we don't want his product. Because if you knew what his product is, you wouldn't buy it. I looked on that Prada website. I wanted to see what some of their products were. So I went on the men's page and I looked at accessories. And they had bags. They had backpacks, and they had clutches, and they had what they called a messenger bag. And I said, well, I don't know what a messenger bag is. Let's see if I want one of those. Basically, it's a purse for men that costs $2,700. Now, I don't want a $2,700 purse. You don't want a $2,700 purse, but you might want to look like those guys did that were carrying it. You might want to look manly and rugged and handsome and cool. That's the image. That's what they're trying to sell. None of us want to go to hell. That's Satan's product. He knows we don't want his product, so he tries to sell us on the image. I saw an example of just how far spread this was. It was about a young teenage girl that had been part of a youth group at church. And she'd grown up in the church. She knew how she was supposed to be, what she was supposed to do, but she made some poor choices. And she ended up expecting a baby. Unmarried, and here she is pregnant, and she wasn't happy about it. The father wasn't in the picture, would never be. And here's this woman, this young girl expecting a baby, and she was really upset, but she wasn't upset because she was pregnant. She wasn't upset because the daddy had left her. She wasn't upset because this baby was going to come into the world and not have a home, not have anybody to set an example to love. She was upset because she couldn't buy any clothes that would fit her except at Walmart and Target. None of the fashion houses, the American Eagle and Tommy Hilfiger and the kind of clothes that she'd always been used to getting, they don't make those in maternity sizes. They don't make those for expecting mothers. This girl was upset, but she wasn't upset because she was unmarried and pregnant. She was upset because she was out of style. That's what Satan's trying to do to us. That's what buying the image does. And that's what Paul's telling the people in 2 Corinthians. Satan is selling an image. He's trying to sell us the same image that he sold Eve. Look back in 2 Corinthians 11:3. Paul says, I fear lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. Paul's saying, I'm afraid Satan's going to trick you the same way he tricked Eve in the garden. I'm afraid you're going to fall for that too. Well, how was Eve deceived? Look down in verse 5. What did Satan tell Eve in the garden? For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, in other words, Satan says, you take a bite of this fruit. Once you eat this, then your eyes shall be opened. You shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Satan wasn't selling fruit. Satan was selling Eve on an image. He was saying, if you just eat this, you'll be like God. You'll have all this knowledge. You'll be so powerful. Have you ever wondered what it'd be like to be like God? I mean, think about it. If you could be like God, you could be all powerful. You could be all wise. You could know everything. You could do anything, anywhere, anytime, everything you wanted. You could make a reality. If you see problems in the world, you could fix them. The government's messed up, you could fix it. Poverty, peace, world peace, everything. You could take care of it if you were God. I used to tell my kids in the classroom that this is not a democracy. This is a benevolent dictatorship, and I'm the dictator. We're going to do things my way. What if you could do that in the whole world? What if you could have your way? Anything that you wanted, you could have. I think I'd be popular too, because if one of my friends wanted a new car, they could have a new car. If you need a new house, sure, have a new house. If you want to have all this unlimited wealth, I could deliver it. Everybody would come to me and they would like me because I'm so popular. I'm so kind. I'm so generous. I could be really handsome. I could change my hair, my face. I could have abs of steel. I could do anything I wanted to if I could be God. And that's what Satan was trying to tell Eve. The problem is, for me to be God, there's already God. God's already on the throne. And so for me to be God, I got to get him out of the way. And that's what people have been trying to do. They try to replace God. They want to be God, and so they got to remove him from the picture. That's why atheists deny the existence of God, because if God really exists, then they can't be in charge. They can't run things because he runs things. So they ignore God, they deny God, they make fun of God, they make fun of us for believing in God because they want him off the throne so that they can be on the throne. And Jesus taught us that's not the way Christians are supposed to be. That's not what it means to be like God. We're supposed to be imitators of God, but that's not what he's talking about. You can't become great in this world by doing what man says to do. Look at Matthew chapter 20. Matthew chapter 20, verse 25. Jesus is talking when he says this. You know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them, but it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. Whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant, even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom from many. Jesus came down from the glories of heaven. He stripped himself of all godly power, spiritual power, to take on the form of man. He came to dwell not as a ruler, but as a servant. He sacrificed all that to serve us, to set an example for us. Satan's message is, to become great, you've got to be like God. You've got to be powerful. You've got to be in charge. And Jesus said, if you want to be like God, you need to be a servant. You need to help other people. Man will tell you to focus on yourself, focus on your needs, what you want. Jesus said, focus on God, focus on others, what they need, what they want. Christ's message is, to become great, you've got to be a servant. The image that Satan is selling is for you to be the God of your life. The image that Jesus is selling is to let God control your life. And those two messages can't exist together. It just doesn't work that way. Let's go back to 2 Corinthians 11. Paul tells us that Satan doesn't do this all by himself. Look at verse 15. It says, therefore, it's no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness. Paul's saying Satan is trying to trick you. He's portraying himself as an angel of light, and he's got himself a sales staff. He's got these other people that are trying to spread this same news. He's got folks working for them, and he knows that to be successful, he has to have the right people working for him. Like you wouldn't buy a product from somebody wearing red, carrying a pitchfork with horns on. We're not going to take advice. We're not going to believe something that somebody tells us that we don't trust. So the people that Satan uses are people that we trust. Maybe it's our family members. Maybe it's people we work with. Maybe it's people that are our bosses even, or our relatives. It's important who you spend time with. Why? Because if you're around certain people long enough, they can rub off on you and you can start being like they are. A few years ago, there was an article talking about divorce, and it was written by this couple, Dr. Gary Rosenberg and his wife, Barb. They go around doing marriage workshops, and they talk about marriage and divorce, and they said divorce is contagious. He said this, the old saying, misery loves company, is unfortunately true. It's common for divorce to break out in an office, company, neighborhood, family, sometimes even in a church group. All it takes is one person going through a divorce, becoming bitter at his or her husband or wife. They aren't seeking to reconcile, and especially if they're seeking to divorce, they'll look for somebody else to console them, to spend time with. And if you're happily married, that doesn't provide them with the fellowship they're seeking. They need for us to have a seed of discontent in our marriage. And the next thing you know, they're trying to build an offense between us and our spouse. I'm not happy. You shouldn't be happy. You need to be like me. They're trying to sell you the image. Satan has his own salespeople, and he's trying to find salespeople that will appeal to you, that can change your mind. There's a psychological experiment that was done back in the 50s, actually, called the Asch Line Study. I didn't know anything about this before I started studying this, but what they did, they brought a dozen college students into a room, and they told them, we're testing your eyesight. We're going to hold a sign up at the other end of this room, and you look at the sign and you tell us how well you can see. And on this card that they held up, there was a line over on the left side of the card. On the right, there were three other lines. Line A, line B, and line C. One of those lines was the same length as the line on the left. And their job was to look at it and to pick A, B, or C, which one is the same size as that line on the left. That seemed pretty simple. They explained the directions several times, and they began. They held up the sign, and obviously one line was the same length as the other line. Everybody picked that. Everything started off good. What they didn't know is that only one person was being studied. Out of those 12 students, one was the subject of the study. The other 11 were actors. And those guys had been told which line to pick. So they started off, and all of a sudden they held up a card, and this guy knew that A was the line that was the same length as the trial line, but everybody else picked B. And he looked around, and he started thinking, wait, isn't it A? Everybody else picked B. Later he admitted, he says, I must not have been listening during the directions. Maybe I missed the point. I better do what everybody else is doing, or they'll laugh at me. So he raised his hand. Even though he knew that wasn't the right answer, he knew that A was the right answer, not B, but he went with the group. And over and over and over, he voted with the group, even when he knew they were wrong. And that's what Satan's trying to do to us. He wants us to go along with the group. He wants us to do what's popular. He wants us to do what's impressive, what everybody else likes, even when we know that it's wrong. Satan can't surround us with people that say wrong. Or he tries to surround us with people that say wrong is right and evil's better than good. And what you feel like is more important than what God says. He wants you to believe that God's not there, or that if he is, he doesn't care about you. And then eventually we'll start voting with the group. And we'll start doing what they want us to do. And he'll tell us that we need cigarettes or drugs to calm our nerves, or we can't enjoy ourselves at a party unless we consume a lot of alcohol, or that we have to sleep around with 2 or 3 people before we're married if we're going to be cool, or after we're married. Maybe we need to practice, shack up a while before we marry. Make sure that that's going to work out. Over and over again, Satan is selling us the same bill of goods. You'll become like God. You'll know what's good and evil. Only you can know what's right for you. Have you ever heard anybody say that? Well, that's not right for me. That's not wrong for me. It's not what I think. It's what God says. The things that Satan wants us to embrace are the things that God condemns. And we need to make sure that we realize that we're surrounded with Satan's salespeople, and that the image may be attractive, but the product didn't. That's why you need to be a Christian. It's the only life worth living, the only death one would dare to die. If you are a Christian this morning, do you find yourself listening to the wrong salespeople? That's why God formed the church, so we could have brothers and sisters, so we could have people together that believe the same thing that we believe, that know the same truths that we know, to support each other, to build each other up, to encourage each other. If you're a Christian, you've allowed Satan to lead you astray from where you know you need to be, or if you've never obeyed the gospel, you can do that this morning. Won't you come? Together we stand as we sing.